When you ask most leaders today, they believe they're losing people because of compensation, remote work, or the younger generation problem. That's a convenient story, but here's what's actually happening. They're losing their best people because the environment is emotionally unstable and professionally confusing. Meetings consistently feel tense. Feedback is inconsistent. Conflict gets avoided until it explodes. And the lost middle manager layer that used to mentor, coach, and stabilize teams is disappearing. So people are left navigating pressure without support. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. Your culture is not defined by the values on your website. It's defined by how your leaders behave under stress. When leaders can't regulate emotion, when they can't communicate defensively, when they dismiss concerns, people stop trusting the system. And your best people, the highest performers, don't fight about it. They don't complain forever. They just leave. Because top talent can handle the hard work. What they won't tolerate is confusion, inconsistency, and emotional volatility. That's why emotional intelligence, EQ, isn't a soft skill anymore. It's a leadership superpower. And if leaders don't change this now, the workforce will keep shifting in one direction, more transactional, less loyal, and organizations will keep bleeding the people that they need the most. The workforce has changed. Leadership must change with it. Welcome back. I'm Steve Yepsuga. On this channel and podcast, I break down cause and effect, what's really happening inside the modern workforce, and I share practical frameworks leaders can apply immediately to build clarity, stability, and performance. If you're a CEO, an owner, an executive, or a team leader, this episode is for you and designed to be actionable. And once again, the workforce has changed. Leadership must change with it. Let's start with a real conflict playing out in business right now. Organizations are demanding speed, output, and accountability, while the workforce is demanding stability, clarity, and psychological safety. That tension creates confusion. Leaders are under pressure to hit targets. Employees are under pressure to perform without support. In middle management, the traditional mentorship layer has been reduced, stretched, or even eliminated. So what happens? Leaders end up managing work without managing the human system that produces the work. And when that happens, emotional intelligence, EQ, becomes the difference between a team that performs and a team that quietly breaks. Now let's talk about some real-world examples of how EQ is making a tangible difference in companies today. Take Microsoft. Under Satya Nadella's leadership, he emphasized empathy and EQ. Microsoft saw a significant revenue boost, growing by over 15% year over year, climbing to approximately $251 billion in revenue. That's a clear sign of how EQ leadership drives real success. Then there's Johnson & Johnson, who's woven EQ into their leadership approach and experienced year over year growth, now reaching over $102 billion. Let's not forget Cisco. They bounced back from a dip to see a 5% increase in revenue, climbing to roughly $56.7 billion. While we can't attribute all of that to EQ, it's part of a broader strategy that emphasizes people-centered leadership. In short, these companies show that when you invest in EQ at the leadership level, it's not just feeling good, it's about real, measurable growth. Because the truth is, you can build a clean org chart, you can install KPIs, you can hold weekly meetings, but if leaders are reactive, dismissive, inconsistent, or unclear under pressure, people lose confidence. And once confidence is gone, performance becomes fragile. Here's the structural problem. Most leaders are promoted for performance, not people skills. They were great producers, outstanding salespeople, fantastic operators, keen technicians, but no one taught them how to regulate emotion under pressure, deliver hard feedback without humiliation, resolve conflict before it turns political, listen to understand instead of listening to reload, build trust through consistency, so leadership becomes trial by fire. And that worked better when workforce had thicker layers of support. But in 2026, the workforce is faster, more distributed, more stressed, less tolerant of hypocrisy and instability. So when emotional intelligence is missing, you see the symptoms. Top performers disengage, meetings feel tense, people avoid accountability because it feels unsafe. You get passive resistance instead of alignment, and trust becomes transactional. This is why some leaders say, people are softer now. No, the system is thinner now. Support decreased, ambiguity increased, pace increased. So the emotional load increased. Leadership has to be educated for that reality. Now, let's connect this to what's happening in education today, because the next generation of employees and leaders is being shaped right now. AI and ChatGPT adoption in K through 12 and higher education. K through 12 schools, the student use is at 84% of all high school students, and this is reported using generative AI tools for schoolwork last year. 30% of K through 12 students are using AI daily. 54% of students globally use AI weekly or daily. From a teacher use, a Stanford Scale study tracked 9,000 US teachers actively using AI power tools, school AI, for lesson planning, quizzes, and student chatbots during the 2025 school year. While no single national registry tracks how many schools, the data clearly shows AI use is present in the majority of US high schools. Teacher usage is rapidly expanding, with tens of thousands of classrooms using AI platforms like School AI, Camingo, and ChatGPT. For colleges and universities, 86% of students worldwide use multiple AI tools for academic work. AI is now considered ubiquitous in higher education, according to 2026 global analysis. While search results do not provide a precise count of colleges using AI tools, the data shows AI is one of the fastest growing use cases in higher education, with students using ChatGPT for writing, brainstorming, and research support. Universities are actively studying and integrating AI into curriculum, policy, and academic support systems. Leaders are promoted for performance, not people skills. Without education, they inherit teams that aren't prepared to lead. Workforces are more diverse, distributed, and stressed more than ever. EQ becomes the stabilizing force. AI, automation, and rapid change amplify emotional friction. Leaders must learn how to reduce uncertainty and build trust. AI isn't just changing business. It's changing how students learn, how they practice thinking, and how they develop communication skills, starting in the K through 12 and accelerating through college. The reality is, students are using AI tools for schoolwork at scale. Teachers are using AI tools to speed up lesson planning and student support. And in higher ed, AI is becoming mainstream for brainstorming, drafting research support, and rewriting. AI can absolutely be helpful, but here's the leadership implication. If students outsource writing, summarizing, brainstorming, and argument structure to AI, many will get fewer reps and the human leadership skills that organizations desperately need. Articulating a point under pressure, defending values and ideas with clarity, reading a room, navigating disagreement, staying composed under stress, and communicating with empathy without losing standards. AI can help you write an essay, but AI cannot regulate your tone in a tense meeting when your team is watching you. AI cannot rebuild trust after you break it. AI cannot replace the emotional stability that teams need from leaders, especially when the environment is chaotic. We're entering a period where people have incredible tools, but uneven human reps. That makes EQ, emotional intelligence, even more critical inside business because leaders must create the environment where people can learn, perform, and collaborate without spiraling into confusion and conflict. Now let's zoom out even further. The broader workforce ecosystem is becoming more individual, more branded, more transactional. You've seen it in NIL, where individuals are taught to think like brands, free agents, and entrepreneurs. We've seen it in major fraud and compliance breakdowns, where incentives plus weak oversight produce predictable outcomes. Different environments, same pattern. When incentives are strong and governance is weak, people will game the system. Let's bring that into business. When companies lack clarity, when accountability is inconsistent, when leaders don't create emotional stability, people don't collaborate freely. They protect themselves. They become cautious. They start documenting everything. They stop taking ownership. They stop bringing bad news early. And leadership wonders why performance feels heavier and slower. Here's why. Because trust is the real operating currency today. Trust is what makes speed possible. Trust is what makes feedback normal. Trust is what makes execution sustainable. And EQ, emotional intelligence, is one of the primary engines of trust. Middle management, the mentorship layer. This has been reduced in many organizations through flattening, cost cutting, and expanding spans of control. You've seen it. And when that layer disappears, you don't just lose capacity, you lose translation, you lose coaching, you lose stabilizers. The lost middle manager is not just a title, it's a function. And when that function disappears, teams don't automatically become empowered. They often become anxious because uncertainty goes up, support goes down. So leadership now has to do two jobs at the same time. Build a system of clarity, priorities, ownership, scorekeeping, cadence, and build a system of emotional stability, trust, communication, conflict fluency, consistent behavior. When leaders fail at the second system, they might still hit quarterly numbers for a while, but they'll lose their best people in the process. Let's define it cleanly. Emotional intelligence is not being emotional. It's the capacity to understand yourself, regulate yourself, understand others, influence outcomes through communication, trust, conflict, and conflict resolution. If leadership development were redesigned today, the core classes would look like this: self-awareness, recognizing triggers, biases, and blind spots; emotional regulation, staying composed when you feel attacked, stressed, or uncertain. Your team absorbs your emotional state. If you spike, they spike. Empathic communication, listening to understand, not listening to respond. Most leaders don't listen to understand. They listen to reload. Clarity under uncertainty, translating complexity into direction without false confidence. This is where clarity and EQ merge. Conflict fluency, addressing tension early, directly, and constructively. Avoid conflict becomes cultural poison. Trust building barriers, consistency, transparency, follow through. Trust is rarely lost in one moment. It's lost through patterns. Here's the most important line in this episode. These skills are teachable, coachable, measurable, which means that EQ is not a personality trait. It's education. It's reps. Let me make this personal. Earlier in my career, I was fortunate to have a few managers who actually managed, meaning they developed people, not in a controlling way, in a coaching way. They gave feedback quickly. They coached in real time. They noticed patterns. They didn't just measure output, they shaped standards, decision-making, and professional maturity. And over time, I watched that layer disappear in many companies. Now you have leaders with massive spans of control doing individual contributor work, running projects, selling, servicing clients, trying to keep the machine moving, often without the time or the training to do the human part well. So what happens? People don't get coached, they get evaluated. People don't get clarity, they get meetings. People don't get developed, they get managed around. And in that environment, EQ becomes the missing capability that keeps teams from unraveling. Because when mentorship disappears, leaders have to become intentional about human leadership on purpose. Not later, now. If you're listening and thinking, okay, what do I do this week? Here's some action items. Action item 1, run a friction audit. Ask your leadership team, where's emotional friction slowing execution right now? Don't accept vague answers like communication. Press for specifics. What are people afraid to speak up? What are decisions unclear? Where are decisions unclear? Where is conflict being avoided? Where are teams operating in passive resistance? Where are high performers disengaging? Because friction is rarely about tasks. It's uncertainty plus emotion. Action 2, install a 10-minute EQ operating rhythm. Pick one recurring meeting and add a 10-minute standing agenda. What's unclear right now? Where is tension building? What are we avoiding? What does the team need from leadership this week? This normalizes emotional clarity without turning work into therapy. Action 3, define trust behaviors like KPIs. Most companies measure numbers and hope that trust happens. Let's flip that around. Define 5 behaviors leaders must execute consistently. Follow through, transparency on decisions, calm under pressure, direct, respectful conflict, and consistent feedback loops. Then reinforce them weekly, because culture is not what you believe, culture is what you tolerate. Now, I want to end with a clear warning, because this is where the stakes are real. If leaders don't improve EQ, here's what continues. Your best people leave quietly. The rest become transactional. Collaboration drops. Conflict goes underground. Leaders spend more time managing emotional fallout than building performance. This becomes a self-inflicted talent crisis, and leaders keep blaming the workforce. But the workforce isn't the problem. The leadership system is outdated. Here's the choice. If you want high performance this year and beyond, you need 2 systems: a clarity system and an emotional intelligence system. Clarity gives direction. Emotional intelligence gives stability. And stability is what allows people to execute at a high level without burning out, without turning cynical, and without leaving. If this episode hits home, please subscribe and share it with a leader who really needs it, especially a leader who still thinks that EQ is optional. If you or your business need help implementing leadership, an operating system with clarity, cadence, KPIs, and EQ standards that actually change behavior, reach out to me. And remember, the workforce has changed. Leadership must change with it. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with others. I appreciate this. It certainly helps the algorithm, and it helps grow our community. Thank you.